You broke my trust. I'll break your peace.
I remember the exact second my life snapped. The steak on my plate was still bleeding when Madison pushed the envelope across the table like it was the check. "Read it," she said, twirling her wine glass, eyes cold behind her mascara. "Don't make a scene, Ethan." I slid the papers out, my hands already shaking even though I had no idea why. The restaurant noise faded into a dull buzz. At the top of the first page, it screamed in bold, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." My throat dried up. I looked at her, then at her father, Charles, sitting beside her in his tailored suit, the kind of man who believed money could fix anything, including his daughter's messes. Madison didn't give me time to breathe. My wife handed me divorce papers at dinner. I would later hear myself repeating in my head like a headline. "We're done. My dad's giving your job to my ex." She leaned in closer, lips curving into a cruel smile. "Pack your things," she smirked. "You're out tomorrow," her dad said. She didn't even blink as she gutted me with each word. I just stared at her, hearing the final line echo in my skull. 2 days later, 197 panic calls. They chose the wrong man to betray. Back then, at that table, it was only a future I couldn't see yet. All I knew was that my chest felt too tight and my world had just tilted off its axis. "Madison," I managed, "what is this? Some kind of sick joke?" She rolled her eyes, like I just spilled coffee on her favorite dress. "Don't be dramatic. We both know it's over. I'm just being efficient." Charles cleared his throat, the way he did in board meetings right before firing someone. "Ethan, this is the cleanest way," he said. "We'll transfer your responsibilities to Ryan. He's already familiar with the company. Less disruption." Ryan. The name hit like a punch. My wife's ex. The one she barely talked to anymore. The ghost that had been circling our marriage from day one. Always dismissed with a laugh and a flip of her perfect hair. "You're giving my job to Ryan?" I repeated slowly, like maybe if I said it wrong, it wouldn't be true. "The same guy you swore you were done with in college." Madison sipped her wine. "He's more aligned with where we're going. You'll land on your feet. You always do." I was too stunned to shout, too numb to flip the table like it deserved. Instead, I looked at her, really looked at her. The red dress she'd chosen for tonight, the one she knew, drove me crazy. The diamond necklace I'd worked overtime to buy. The way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes, focusing just over my shoulder instead, like I was already a stranger. That's when something in my brain slid into place, a memory I'd been ignoring for weeks. Her late nights at strategy sessions, the sudden passwords on her phone, the new perfume that wasn't the one I'd given her, the way she'd flinch when Ryan's name popped up on old photos. I hadn't wanted to see it. Now I couldn't unsee it. "You've been seeing him, haven't you?" I asked quietly. Her jaw twitched, just for a second. Then the mask snapped back on. "Don't twist this," she said. "You're paranoid, Ethan. This is about us growing apart. About you not being enough." There it was. The dagger. Charles didn't even pretend to be shocked. He just stared at me like a problem that had finally been solved. "We've drafted a very generous settlement," he said, tapping the papers. "Sign tonight, move out tomorrow, and there's no need for anything messy." No need for anything messy, right? Because the mess was already inside me. I looked around the restaurant. Couples laughing, forks clinking, waiters weaving between tables with practiced smiles. No one had any idea that, at that tiny corner table, a marriage and a career were being executed with the same casual efficiency as ordering dessert. "Why here?" I asked. "Why like this?" Madison shrugged, brushing invisible lint from her dress. "You're always too busy at the office. And honestly, public places keep you from embarrassing yourself. We all know you can be emotional." The way she said emotional made it sound like pathetic. I felt something shift inside me. Not a breakdown, something colder. Sharper, a line being drawn. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You cheat on me with your ex. Your father fires me and hands him my job. Then you expect me to quietly sign everything away over risotto." Her eyes flashed. "Watch your tone." There was again that queen on a throne attitude she'd been wearing more and more lately. Like she was above consequences. "How long?" I asked. She frowned. "How long what?" How long have you and Ryan been sneaking around behind my back? The question hung between us like smoke. Charles shifted uncomfortably. Madison didn't. She just smirked. Does it matter? You're leaving either way. That answer told me everything I needed. The shock didn't go away, but it changed flavor. The raw hurt hardened into something heavier, denser. Anger, yes. But under that, a strange, icy clarity. They thought I was cornered. They thought they were in control. I glanced down at the divorce papers, all that neat legal language spelling out the end of 11 years of my life. At the very bottom, there was a line waiting for my signature, a little space where I was supposed to surrender. I picked up the pen. Madison's eyes gleamed, already victorious. But instead of signing, I calmly flipped to the second page and the third, reading every line like it was a contract in a hostile takeover. Because that's what this was. Ethan, Charles said, a warning creeping into his voice, there's nothing to negotiate. It's done. I looked up and smiled. It probably scared them more than if I had yelled. Nothing is done, I said softly. Not yet. Madison scoffed. Oh, please. What are you going to do? Cry? Post about it online? I slid the papers back into the envelope and tucked it into my jacket. I'm going to think, I said, and then I'm going to respond. She snapped. You have until tomorrow. After that, the offer changes. I stood up, dropping my napkin on the table like a white flag I was refusing to raise. Then you'd better hope I'm still feeling generous tomorrow, I said, because you just declared war on the wrong man. I walked out of that restaurant alone, my marriage collapsing behind me like a burning building. I didn't know yet exactly how deep her betrayal went. I didn't know about the photos, the hotel receipts, or the way the people I trusted had been laughing behind my back. I didn't know that in 48 hours, my phone would show 197 missed calls from the very people sitting at that table. All I knew, stepping into the cold night air, was that Madison and her father believed they'd just destroyed me. They had no idea what they'd actually done was wake me up. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch, my couch in my house that I'd apparently been evicted from by a smug 29-year-old in a red dress, and stared at the ceiling like it owed me answers. Every little moment from the last 6 months marched through my head on repeat. The sudden girls' nights, with no photos posted anywhere. The way she'd started showering the second she got home. The fake laughing at her phone and flipping it face down when I walked into the room. You know that feeling when your brain starts replaying everything in high definition and you realize you've been a willing idiot? That was me. Ethan Carter, proud owner of a blindfold I'd tied myself. Around 3 in the morning, something snapped. I sat up, grabbed my keys, and drove back to the office. Not because I was some workaholic robot. Because if Madison and her father were bold enough to stage an execution dinner, it meant they were already moving pieces behind my back. I needed to see the board before they wiped me off it. The building was dark, save for a few emergency lights glowing in the lobby. Security knew me. We're used to. Late one, Mr. Carter, the guard Luis asked, eyebrows lifting. Just tying up loose ends, I said, forcing a smile. You mind if I head up? He hesitated for half a second, just long enough to sting, then nodded. Of course. I rode the elevator to the 7th floor, watching my reflection in the metal doors. I looked like a man halfway between a nervous breakdown and a hostile takeover. When I walked into my office, I knew immediately something was wrong. My framed wedding photo was missing from the shelf. Not crooked, not knocked over. Gone. That picture had survived 3 office renovations, a coffee spill, and 1 small earthquake. I'd never moved it. I hadn't even thought about it. But now the empty square of lighter paint on the wall felt like someone had carved out a piece of my life with a spoon. I turned slowly, letting my eyes sweep the room. That's when I noticed the desk. My chair was slightly pulled back. The top drawer wasn't fully closed. Someone had been here. I opened the drawer, heart thudding. My personal folder, the one where I kept old contracts, notes, and a couple of things I didn't want in the company system, was shifted to the side. On top of it was something new. A hotel key card, bright gold with the logo of the Grand Meridian on it. Madison's favorite spa weekend hotel. The air left my lungs. It was like the universe had physically placed the answer in my hands and said, "Here, you still want to pretend you don't know." I flipped the card over. Room 1408. Nothing else. My first thought was stupid. Maybe she left it here by accident. Then the second thought came, darker and truer. Madison never accidentally left anything anywhere. Not earrings, not receipts, not evidence. I checked my desk calendar. Tomorrow. No. Today, technically, she had another branding strategy retreat booked. 2 nights. Same dates that had been blocked out weeks ago. The room spun a little. I sank into my chair and opened my email. Maybe I was hoping to find a message that would make this all a misunderstanding. Instead, I found something else. An automatically generated calendar invite had gone out from Charles's assistant an hour after our dinner. Leadership transition meeting, Monday, 9 a.m. Attendees, Charles, board members, Ryan. My name wasn't on the list. So that was that. They were already rewriting the future, and they expected me to just shuffle along quietly off stage. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I opened a blank document and started typing. Not an email, not a resignation, just notes, facts, dates, little things I'd pushed aside as no big deal. Madison's new phone passcode, changed 2 months ago after girls' trip. Credit card charge, Grand Meridian, 3 separate weekends. Ryan suddenly back in contact for networking. Madison defending him in every argument. My access to some financial reports quietly restricted last week. By the time I finished, the list looked less like paranoia and more like a timeline of a slow-motion car crash. I closed my eyes and saw Madison's face at dinner, the way she'd smirked when she told me to pack my things. Like I was an intern being let go after a probation period, not the man who'd stood next to her at an altar and promised forever. That's when another question hit me. How did that hotel key card get in my drawer? Luis never went upstairs. Cleaning staff only came on weekends, and they barely touched desks. The only people who had access to my office with a master key were leadership, or someone who came in with them. I suddenly pictured Madison in here, moving my things around like she owned the place, laughing with Ryan as they tried to decide what to take, what to erase, what to leave behind. Anger flared so hot, I had to stand up. If they wanted me out, fine. But leaving a key card like a calling card in the same drawer where I kept my life, that wasn't an accident. That was a message. We were here. We took what we wanted. What are you going to do about it? I picked up the key card again. Room 1408. I checked the time on my phone. 4:17 a.m. Her retreat started tonight. I slipped the card into my wallet. For the first time since dinner, my pulse settled. Not because I was calm, because I finally had something I hadn't had in hours. A plan. I left the office as the sky outside began to lighten. That gray blue before sunrise where everything feels unreal. My marriage was hanging by threads. My job was already gone in a boardroom I hadn't entered yet. And my wife was probably dreaming in silk sheets about a future where I didn't exist. She thought she'd already won. She had no idea I was about to check into room 1408. I checked into the Grand Meridian that evening like any other guest, wearing the most forgettable version of myself I could assemble. Plain navy jacket, white shirt, notia, no wedding ring. The concierge smiled the way they're trained to. Good evening, sir. Checking in. Yeah, I said, placing my card on the counter. Reservation under Ethan Cross. Not my real last name. Old college alias. The system accepted it without a blink. The lobby smelled like expensive flowers and quiet secrets. Crystal chandeliers, soft piano music, couples laughing over cocktails. I wondered how many marriages had quietly died in this building, wrapped in silk sheets and lies. My room was on the 12th floor, far from 1408. On purpose. I didn't want my name anywhere near theirs in the system. I just needed a base. I dropped my bag, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the key card in my hand. Room 1408. Madison's strategy retreat. My wife's little kingdom of make-believe. I waited until it was almost 9 p.m. That was when she usually checked in to her business trips. Those curated selfies with dim room lighting and vague captions like chasing dreams. Tonight, my phone stayed silent. That told me even more. Around 9:15, I left my room and took the stairs up 2 floors, not the elevator. Less cameras, less chance of bumping into them. Floor 14 was quieter. The carpet was thicker, the hall wider. I walked down the corridor like I belonged there, heart hammering in my throat, every door identical until I reached it. For a second, I just stood there, hand hovering, listening. Nothing. No voices. No TV. No music. I slid the key card into the lock. Green light. Click. My stomach lurched. The universe had officially signed off on the worst idea of my life. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was dark, curtains drawn, just the faintest line of city light sneaking around the edges. I left the door slightly ajar, ready to yank it shut at the first sound of footsteps. I didn't turn on the main light. I used my phone flashlight instead, sweeping the beam slowly across the room. The bed was perfectly made. No ventipilos, no those seats, no trail clothes. For a second, I thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe the key was old. Maybe the room number had changed. Maybe this was all one big paranoid spiral. Then I saw it. On the desk, next to the sleek hotel notepad, were 2 wine glasses and a bottle of expensive red already uncorked. And right beside them, face down but not locked, was Madison's phone. My heart dropped into my shoes. She never left that thing anywhere. Not at home. Not in the car. Certainly not in a hotel room she hadn't even checked into yet. I moved closer, fingers shaking as I picked it up. The screen lit up automatically. No pascode. Just a notification banner across the top. Ryan, just parked. Meet you in the lobby in 5. Can't wait to see you. Every last bit of doubt inside me died. I put the phone back exactly where it was. If I was going to crash this little party, I wanted it all. The truth, the faces, the excuses. Not a single out-of-context text. I was about to leave when something else caught my eye. On the bed, carefully folded, was a dress. Red. Tight. The same one she'd worn to dinner when she'd handed me the divorce papers. Sudden heat rushed to my face. She hadn't even bothered to pick a new look for her second life. She was planning to recycle the same costume for her encore performance with Ryan. I almost walked out right then, stormed into the lobby, and waited for them in front of everyone. Instead, instinct pulled me toward the bathroom. Inside, the counter was already lined with her things: makeup bag, perfume, hairbrush, toothbrush still sealed in plastic. She'd staged her presence before even showing up. I caught my reflection in the mirror. I didn't recognize the man staring back. Eyes too sharp, jaw tight, a stranger wearing my face. That's when I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Voices. Her laugh. Lightning shot through me. A lunge for the light switch and kill my phone screen, plunging the room into darkness. My hand found a small closet to the right of the door. I slid inside and left the door cracked barely an inch. The hallway voices got louder. Seriously, you're overthinking it, Madison was saying, that same dismissive tone she used on me. He'll sign. He doesn't have the spine for drama. Ryan chuckled. Still, what if he shows up at the office Monday? He won't, she said. My dad will handle it. Relax. This weekend is about us. The key card slid into the lock. Green light. Click. The door opened. I flattened myself against the wall of the closet as they walked in, silhouettes in the dimness. Madison flicked on the lamp by the bed, warm light spilling across the room, and a neatly folded red dress. Perfect, she said. Told you they'd set it up. Ryan wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing his face in her neck. Perfect as you, he murmured. I felt my fingers curl in a fist so tight my nails bit my palms. They were 3 feet away from the closet, laughing, touching, talking about me like I was a memo they'd already deleted. And I was right there, watching, listening, silently rewriting the ending they planned for me. If you've never listened to your own wife talk about you like your roadkill, let me tell you, it does something to you. I stood there in that cramped closet, every nerve on fire, while Madison laughed and shrugged off 11 years of our life like it was a bad haircut. So, Ryan said, kicking off his shoes, how mad was he at dinner? She snorted. You give him too much credit. He just sat there like a shocked puppy. I pushed the papers over, told him my dad's giving you his job. He looked like somebody unplugged his brain. Did he yell? Throw anything? Ryan sounded almost disappointed. Please, she said, walking over to the desk. Glasses clinked. Ethan doesn't do drama. He just gets all quiet and hurt, like that's supposed to guilt me into changing my mind. It's boring. Boring. That word hit harder than any curse. I heard the soft pop of the wine being poured, the clink of glasses. My hand was sweating so badly I almost dropped my phone. I forced myself to breathe slowly, quietly, while my thumb blindly unlocked the screen. If I was going to destroy this fantasy of hers, I needed proof. I opened the camera, hit record, and angled the phone through the tiny crack in the closet door. Madison walked into view first, wine glass in hand, her hair down around her shoulders. The red dress was on now. I hadn't even heard her slip it on. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, jacket off, tie loose, watching her with the kind of hungry grin I'd once thought was reserved for me. "To Ethan," she said, holding up her glass. Ryan smirked. "May his next LinkedIn update be honest." They clinked their drinks and took a long, satisfied sip. I wanted to explode out of that closet and end it right there. But something meaner, colder inside me whispered, "Wait, let her talk." She always loved the sound of her own voice. "He really doesn't suspect anything?" Ryan asked. "Oh, he suspects," she said, rolling her eyes. "He's been doing that sad staring thing for weeks. But he never confronts me. He just hopes I'll magically go back to being the perfect little wife he married." She sat down next to him and flicked his collar. "Newsflash, that girl died a long time ago. That girl never existed," I thought bitterly. Ryan laughed. "I almost feel bad for the guy." "Don't," she said flatly. "He had his chance. My dad and I practically handed him a future, and he kept hesitating, thinking about the employees and ethics and all that hero nonsense. You don't hesitate. That's why you're getting the job." I felt my jaw tighten. So that was it. I wasn't ambitious enough. Not ruthless enough. Not enough of a snake for their family empire. "Besides," she added, voice dropping into that flirty purr I used to crave, "you were always better, anyway." I didn't need her to spell out better at what. My thumb trembled over the screen, but I kept filming. Her words, his hands on her waist, her laugh. I wanted every second captured. Not because I enjoyed torturing myself, but because I knew in a flash of brutal clarity. This wouldn't just be about a broken marriage. This would be about leverage. About flipping the script on people who thought I was harmless. She set her glass down and turned fully toward him. "After this weekend, my dad files the final papers at work. The board sees you as the smooth transition. Ethan sulks for a few months, cries to his little friends, then disappears. I get the social image, the lifestyle, the man who actually acts like a winner." Each syllable sliced another piece off the man I'd been before tonight. Ryan cupped her jaw. "And your husband never finds out about us." She smirked. "He's too scared to look. That's why this works." That was the moment something inside me snapped so loudly I was surprised I didn't hear it. Scared. She really believed that. I stopped the recording, pocketed my phone, and felt my heartbeat steady into something terrifyingly calm. Enough. I eased the closet door open an inch, then another. Their backs were to me now. Madison leaning into him, his hands roaming like he'd earned her. I stepped out. The carpet muted my footsteps. My shadow stretched across the floor before I did, falling over them like a warning. Ryan noticed first. He froze, eyes going wide over Madison's shoulder. Maddie," he stammered. She sighed dramatically. "What, you already nervous? You weren't this jumpy in college." She turned. Her face went white, then flushed a furious red in the span of a heartbeat. "Hey, sweetheart," I said quietly. "Sorry I'm late to the strategy retreat. Traffic." For one long, perfect second, the world stopped. Her jaw dropped. Her eyes flicked from me to the closet, to the door, to the bed, as her brain frantically tried to rewrite reality fast enough to keep control. Then she snapped back into performance mode. "What the hell are you doing here?" she hissed, standing so fast she knocked her glass to the floor. Red wine exploded across the carpet like spilled blood. I looked at the stain, then back at her. "Cleaning up your mess," I said, starting with the truth. Madison stared at me as if I were a hallucination she hadn't ordered. The confidence she weaponized so effortlessly vanished for a flicker of a second, replaced by something raw and unfiltered. Fear. Not guilt. Not regret. Fear. Then she did what snakes do when cornered. She shed her skin and found another lie beneath it. You're insane, she spat. You're stalking me now? Are you that desperate? Ryan still hadn't moved. He sat rigid, hands hovering in the air like he wasn't sure if he should defend her or hide behind her. The man, who was apparently more decisive than Ethan, looked like a spooked intern who'd walked into the wrong meeting. I stepped farther into the room, closing the door gently behind me. You left your phone unlocked, I said, tapping my pocket, and your key card in my office. If anyone's stalking anyone, you two are amateur hour. Madison blinked, too fast. Attell. I'd watched her lie to waiters, friends, gym coaches, her own mother. She always blinked when she was cornered. That's not my key card, she snapped. You planted it. I raised my eyebrows. In a drawer I didn't know was rifled through. In a room I wasn't supposed to discover. Sure, Madison. Because I'm clairvoyant now. Ryan finally stood, tried to arrange his face into something resembling authority. Ethan, look, this isn't what it looks like. I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just slipped out. Oh, buddy, I said, this is exactly what it looks like. The clothes, the wine, the dress, the hotel, the divorce papers that magically appeared after this room was booked. You two are too dumb to cover your tracks. Madison's jaw clenched so tight I could practically hear her enamel cracking. She inhaled sharply, squared her shoulders, and dropped the next lie like a grenade. We're not having an affair. Her tone was dripping with bored disdain, like I'd interrupted her manicure to ask if water was wet. I tilted my head. So this, I pointed between them, is what? A professional development seminar? Ryan opened his mouth to answer, but Madison sliced her hand through the air to silence him. She wasn't talking to him anymore. She was performing for me, except this time, I knew every trick. You don't get to accuse me, she snapped. You checked out of this marriage years ago. You stopped being ambitious. You got comfortable. I evolved, you stagnated. That's not betrayal. That's growth. The classic narcissism. My betrayal was her liberation. My devotion was her inconvenience. My loyalty was her leash. You evolve into a woman who lies for sport, I replied calmly. Congratulations. Her face twisted into a sneer. Oh, get over yourself. You think just because you bought a few rings and paid some bills that I owe you my life? Men like you are terrified of strong women. That's funny, I said, because strong women don't need their daddy to fire their husbands and gift wrap their boyfriend a job. Ryan stiffened. Madison's nostrils flared. I had hit the bone. You're not walking out of here with anything, she hissed. Not your job, not your reputation, not a pity payout. My dad has the board. He owns the narrative. I smiled. Does he own this? I asked, lifting my phone and tapping the screen. The recorded video began playing at full volume. After this weekend, my dad files the final papers. Ethan sulks for a few months. I get the lifestyle, the man who actually acts like a winner. Madison froze. Ryan's eyes bulged like he'd seen a ghost crawl out of his childhood closet. I'll let the audio run long enough for a few more incriminating gems. He won't confront me. He's too scared to look. The sound stopped. Silence swallowed the room. Then Madison lunged toward me, hands out like claws. I stepped back effortlessly. She wasn't dangerous. She was desperate. Desperate people always attack the evidence, never the truth. Delete it, she screeched. You can't use that. Oh, trust me, I said softly, sliding my phone in my pocket. I can, and I will. Ryan stepped between us finally, palms raised, voice trembling. Ethan, man, let's talk about this. We can figure out. I cut him off with a stare sharp enough to peel skin. You made the same mistake she did, I said. You thought quiet meant weak. I walked past him, past Madison, past the life they tried to bury me under, and opened the hotel door. Before leaving, I turned back and looked at her. Really looked at the woman I once thought was my partner, my future, my forever. She wasn't any of those things. She was a beautifully packaged warning sign I ignored for over a decade. This isn't over, she whispered, voice shaking. No, I said. It's just beginning. Then I shut the door on room 1408. And for the first time in months, I wasn't the one trapped inside. Home didn't feel like a place anymore. It felt like a crime scene. I walked out of the Grand Meridian with my hands still trembling and my brain running on some mix of rage, adrenaline, and a weird, icy clarity I'd never felt before. The kind of calm you get when the worst thing has already happened and there's nothing left to fear. For 11 years, my whole world had narrowed down to 3 points: Madison, the company, and the future we were supposedly building together. In one weekend, she tried to take all three. Fine. If she wanted war, I decided I'd give her something she'd never prepared for. A version of me that stopped playing nice. I ended up in my car without remembering how I got there. The city lights blurred past the windshield as I just drove. No destination, no plan, just the realization that everything I'd been loyal to was busy burying me alive. At some point, I pulled into an empty parking lot and killed the engine. Silence dropped like a curtain. That's when it hit. Not the anger. I've been running on that for hours. The grief. It came in waves, heavy and choking. Not because I'd lost Madison. Some part of me had known she'd been gone long before that hotel room. I was grieving the version of myself who still believed in her. The guy who thought, we'll figure it out, was enough to fix anything. I sat there with my forehead against the steering wheel, breathing through it. Memories came uninvited. Her falling asleep on my chest on that awful pull-out couch in our first apartment. Her cheering the night I got promoted. Her crying in the hospital bathroom when we thought we couldn't have kids. Were any of those moments real? Or were they just rehearsals? Practice for a bigger stage where she'd be the star and I'd be the gullible supporting character? My phone buzzed. For a split second, my heart leaped stupidly. Maybe she'd texted. Maybe she'd realized. Unknown number. Mr. Carter? This is Allison Price. Charles gave me your contact. Please confirm you received the divorce documents, and we can schedule a time for you to sign. Of course. Efficiency above everything. Even humanity. I stared at the message, then opened my photos. There it was. The video. Madison raising a glass to my downfall. Laughing about my supposed lack of spine. Promising that I'd just sulk and disappear. I watched it once. Then again. By the third time, I wasn't flinching anymore. I was studying it like evidence in a case. You think you own the narrative? I whispered to the empty car. You really don't. I hit call on a contact I hadn't used in years. Ethan, a sleepy male voice answered. You okay? It's like 2 in the morning. Hey, no, I said. Remember when you told me if my life ever exploded, I should call you before I signed anything? Noah had been my college roommate before he went to law school and became the guy companies called when they wanted to avoid getting sued into oblivion. We hadn't hung out in a while. Life, work, marriage had all got in the way. Well, marriage had just removed itself from the list. There was a rustle on his end. The tone in his voice changed instantly. What happened? My wife, I said slowly, served me divorce papers at dinner. Her father's firing me on Monday and handing my job to her ex. Also, I just walked in on both of them at the Grand Meridian. I have video, and they think I'm going to quietly vanish. A low whistle. Okay, I'm awake now. I told them everything. Dinner, the key card, the office, the hotel room, their little toast to my destruction. The more I talked, the less crazy it sounded. Not because it wasn't insane, but because saying it out loud turned it from a nightmare into a case file. First thing, Noah said when I finished, voice razor sharp now, do not sign anything. Not a text, not a napkin, not a just to acknowledge. They're counting on you being emotional and compliant. Yeah, I said. That was the sales pitch. Second, he continued, screenshots, backups, timestamps, cloud storage. Forward that video to a secure email. If Madison or Charles suspect you recorded anything, they might go nuclear. Too late, I replied. Madison already tried to claw my phone out of my hand. That tracks, he muttered. Good news for you? If her father's mixing corporate power with her marital mess, and there's proof of an affair tied to professional retaliation, this isn't just ugly, it's leverage. Leverage, not revenge, not karma. Leverage. A way to walk out of this with more than emotional scars and a moving box. What do I do till Monday? I asked. Live like every move is recorded, he said. Be calm. Be polite. Let them think you're broken. People like that get sloppy when they believe they've already won. Then you show up where it matters, with evidence, counsel, and options. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the dark sky through the windshield. Madison thought she knew my limits. She'd built her whole little betrayal theater on the assumption that I'd fold, cry, and go quietly. Maybe that used to be true, but somewhere between the divorce papers over dinner and the closet in room 1408, the version of me she depended on had died. In his place was someone else. Someone who was done begging to be chosen. Someone who was finally willing to choose himself. By the time the sun started bleeding over the horizon, I'd made my decision. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to make sure that when people told the story of how Madison and her father tried to erase me, they wouldn't be able to get to her happy ending, because I'd already rewritten the final act. Monday came fast. Too fast. The weekend blurred into a strange, weightless void. Hours spent documenting everything, backing up files, forwarding evidence, taking screenshots of financial records I suddenly realized had been quietly altered. Madison's fingerprints were everywhere, not just on Ryan. By the time the sun rose Monday morning, I was running on caffeine, spite, and something else I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. I suited up, not in defeat, not in desperation, but like armor. Dark navy, crisp shirt, no trembling hands. I tied my tie the way I used to before big negotiations, the ones where millions hinged on how well I hid my nerves. Except today wasn't business as usual. Today, I wasn't saving the company. I was saving myself. I parked in my usual spot at the office, the one Madison once joked was the only real perk you earned on your own. Funny how compliments rot into insults in hindsight. The walk from the lot to the building felt different. Before, these doors were routine. Today, they were the gates of an arena. The air actually tasted electric. Luis, the night guard who worked days too, looked up as I walked in. He hesitated, then leaned forward slightly. "You good, Mr. Carter?" For the first time in years, someone wasn't pretending. I gave him a nod. Better than expected. He nodded back like he understood more than he let on. Upstairs, the 7th floor was buzzing. People were whispering near the elevators. Glancing toward the boardroom, where men in expensive suits gathered like vultures, circling something already dead. I walked toward my office, out of habit, maybe, and found the door slightly ajar. Inside stood Allison Price, the assistant who'd texted me about signing the divorce papers. She froze when she saw me, eyes widening a fraction before she pasted on a smile. "Ethan," she said gently, like she was speaking to a patient rather than a peer. "Charles asked me to gather your personal belongings. To make this transition easier." Ah, yes, easier. Because nothing screams compassion like packing a man's life into a cardboard box while he's still breathing. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. Allison's smile twitched. "Don't," I said quietly. "I'll take care of it." She opened her mouth to protest, but something in my tone made her step aside. I walked to my desk. There, sitting dead center, was the same divorce envelope from Friday. Charles must have thought symbolism was a personality trait. Allison cleared her throat. "Once you sign, HR will finalize your departure, and..." I held up a hand. "Where's Charles?" "The boardroom," she said. "They're preparing to introduce Ryan as interim president." It was surreal hearing the words out loud, like I was attending my own funeral and someone else wrote the eulogy. "Is Madison here yet?" I asked. Allison blinked. "She's in the conference lounge. With Ryan." Of course she was. I took a breath, slow, deliberate, the kind actors do before nailing a scene. "Could you do me a favor?" I asked. She nodded, confused. "Tell Charles I'll attend the meeting. But I refuse to sign anything until I've spoken." Her brow furrowed. "Ethan, I don't think." "You asked me to confirm my receipt of his documents." I interrupted, my voice cold as marble. "He'll get his confirmation. In person." Something passed across her eyes. Not sympathy, not fear, recognition. She'd seen this moment before with other men. The one where they either collapse or stand. "I'll let him know," she said, retreating quickly. The moment she left, I sat down in my chair. My chair. And for a second, I let myself feel it. This place was never meant to be Madison's stage. It was mine. At 10 sharp, I entered the boardroom. Every head turned. Some surprised, some annoyed, some entertained, like they were preparing for a spectacle. Charles sat at the head of the table, chin high, face calm, the kind of calm only men with lawyers and egos confuse for power. Madison sat to his right, ankle crossed over knee, red lips curled into a smile that said, "I told you he'd show up for his humiliation." Ryan sat beside her, stiff and uneasy, like he was hearing the soundtrack to his own downfall in the distance, but couldn't identify the composer. "Ethan," Charles said, voice dripping with rehearsed pity, "we weren't sure you'd join us today." I set my phone on the table, screen down. A simple gesture, innocent looking, but Madison flinched, noticed, and for the first time, looked afraid. "You scheduled a meeting to discuss my replacement," I said. I assumed it would be rude not to attend. A nervous chuckle rippled through the room. Charles cleared his throat. "Let's remain professional. This transition is not personal. It's strategic." I locked eyes with him. "Funny," I said, "because the video I have sounds very personal." The room went silent. Ryan's breath hitched. Madison's smile fell apart like wet tissue. Charles's face twitched. I tapped the screen. The boardroom speakers weren't connected, but my phone didn't need amplification. I let the recording play just loud enough. "After this weekend, my dad files the final papers. Ethan sulks for a few months, cries, then disappears." Someone at the table actually gasped. I paused the audio. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand. I didn't need to. "I'm not disappearing," I said. "Not for my position. Not for my reputation. Not for what I built. And certainly not because your daughter wanted an ego upgrade." Charles's nostrils flared. Madison swallowed hard. Ryan looked physically ill. I leaned back in my chair. "I came here today not to fight," I said, "but to watch something beautiful." Charles squinted. "And what is that?" I smiled. Not cruel, not triumphant. Certain. "The moment you realize," I said, "you chose the wrong man to betray." No one spoke. No one moved. For the first time since this nightmare began, I was the one writing the script. Silence sat in that boardroom like a loaded gun. No one dared breathe. The men who once nodded at Charles like obedient statues were suddenly studying their hands, their cufflinks, their notebooks, anything that wasn't his face. Power shifts aren't loud. They happen quietly, like gravity reassigning itself. Madison broke first. She leaned forward, voice shaking but wrapped in bravado like cheap gift paper. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You're all letting him manipulate you. He's emotional. He's unstable. You know how he gets when you betray him?" I asked. Her eyes sparked like she'd swallow a match if it meant spitting flames. "This is a private matter," she said. "The board doesn't need to be involved in my marriage." I tilted my head slowly, savoring the moment. "You brought the board into our marriage the second your father tied my termination to your boyfriend's promotion," I said. "You didn't just cheat on me. You weaponized my job, the company's leadership, and corporate influence to facilitate it." I turned my gaze to the board. "That," I added, "is no longer marital. That's governance." A few men shifted uncomfortably. Lawyers smell liability like sharks smell blood. Charles cleared his throat and straightened his tie, but his confidence had dents now. "Let's not dramatize this," he said. "Personal decisions shouldn't interfere with corporate progress." I smiled, slowly, deliberately. "But they have," I said. "Your daughter's affair with the man you're promoting created a conflict of interest, and your plan to oust me before announcing him violates ethical hiring practices." I tapped the phone again. "Plus," I added, "I now have time geotagged evidence of collusion and harassment." Ryan visibly blanched. Madison shot him a look sharp enough to puncture his spine. The room went still. Finally, one board member, a man named Harris, whose entire personality was skepticism, spoke. "Charles," he said, voice low, "you told us Ethan was stepping down voluntarily. You didn't mention any of this." His tone suggested any of this was the polite version of what he wanted to call it. Before Charles could answer, I leaned forward. "Let me be clear," I said. "I'm not stepping down. I'm not resigning. I am not leaving quietly so your daughter can trade spouses and CEOs in the same fiscal quarter.
You're
The
pathetic,
words
she
landed like
yelled.
nails.
You can't
sealing
accept
coffin.
that someone better
Madison
came along.
stood.
You
So
dragged your
fast her
feet
chair
for years,
screeched
Ethan.
across the floor.
You didn't evolve.
You didn't chase anything. You were content being average. Every syllable was spit like venom. This part wasn't for the board. It was for me. It always had been. Slowly, deliberately, I stood. The room seemed to shrink around us, the fluorescent lights buzzing like flies circling roadkill. When I married you, I said quietly, I thought loyalty was strength. I thought stability was love. I thought building something together meant we faced life as a team. I held her eyes, watched her pupils flicker like her brain was trying to find an insult sharp enough to kill what she saw in mine. But now I understand something. I continued. You don't want a partner. You want an audience. Ryan flinched like I'd slapped him. Madison's lips parted, but no sound came out. And the thing about audiences? I said softly, they're fickle. They don't stay loyal once the illusion breaks. Then I turned to the board. You wanted Ryan because you thought he was the easier transition, I said. A smooth replacement. Someone who'd obey. I let the silence breathe. But now you know he walks into leadership meetings through hotel rooms. A few muffled coughs. A stifled laugh. Someone whispered, Jesus Christ. Ryan opened his mouth, panic swallowing his features, but Madison cut him off with a hissed whisper that wasn't remotely quiet. Shut up. Her father stiffened. He'd built his empire on perception and precision. Now he was standing in a wreckage of both, stamped with his family name. I reached for my phone and slid it into my jacket. I won't sue, I said. Not yet. But here's what's going to happen. No one blinked. I remained in my position. I continued. Uninterrupted. Effective immediately. Someone breathed out like they'd been drowning. Secondly, Ryan never enters this building again. Not as an employee, not as a consultant, not as a whisper in the hallway. Ryan recoiled like I'd ripped out his spine. Lastly, I said, voice steady, Madison and I will finalize our divorce privately. No board involvement. No corporate resources. No leverage. Then I leaned forward, hands on the table. And if any of you try to interfere with that, I tap my jacket pocket. The video becomes public. No shouting. No threats. Just gravity. The men exchanged glances, calculations already happening behind their eyes. Finally, Harris spoke. I vote to retain Mr. Carter. One by one, hands lifted. Charles didn't vote. Charles didn't move. Madison's face collapsed. The mask she'd spent years sculpting melting into something raw, feral, unguarded. You think you've won? She whispered. I stepped past her on my way out of the boardroom. No, I said without turning back. I think I finally stopped losing. The door clicked shut behind me. Not an end, a beginning.